Hey, Crossgates. Time for our midweek update for this week. And I don't know if you can tell where I am. I'm actually in the office of our music pastor. And I figure this week, the update, is just, I can give you all a little bit more information, some stories about Kim and that I've learned from her, really funny stories about how she got into ministry, how she got started, what her educational background is, where she still wants to go when it comes to her education, that kind of stuff. So just to jump right into it, she has this really funny story that she was telling me. So Kim grew up in Minnesota and grew up in the Catholic Church, actually, and knew her husband in high school, barely, but she and her, her brother and her now husband were actually friends, and they kind of knew of each other. Long story short, her husband joined the Marines, went off and served in Guantanamo Bay, and then when he came back, this tall, dark, and handsome Marine in his dress uniform came in and just swooped her off her feet, and they married there in Minnesota. And she grew up in a musical family. She grew up in a very musical family, and went to the University of Minnesota, where she studied vocal performance. But when you're married to a Marine and you're married to someone who eventually gets into a career with large companies, before Kim could finish her degree where she was for the first year at University of Minnesota, she went off, and I think he took her, that was part of the funny story, he took her from the frozen wastelands of Minnesota to Florida. And so she was more than happy and eager to make that junket down to Florida. They lived there for a while, and went up to, his career took them up to New Jersey. So she's making this cross from here down to here in our country, going up to New Jersey. And then at a certain point in time, when WorldCom was getting strong, he was hired, and she came to Mississippi with her husband and family, and came to Brandon and lived here while her husband worked at WorldCom, and that's when she got involved here in our church in the past. Started out as a part-time worship leader, helper, and right about the time that WorldCom, y'all remember, WorldCom kind of fell apart, that was right about that time that Kim had to make a decision whether she wanted to stay or could stay in music ministry, where she was with the Lutheran Church for a long time, and now coming into the, my conversation's going everywhere. She grew up Catholic. They became Lutheran after they married, then came into the Methodist Church when they were in New Jersey. So the story is just hilarious and all over the place. But she has come to this giant X, this point. And while she was serving here, WorldCom fell apart. And in order for them to provide for their family, she had to move from a part-time position to a full-time position. And it was during that time that she was in school at Belhaven to finish her bachelor's in vocal performance. But again, she had been serving in churches for decades, that she had to find a full-time church. And that's when she left our church and was asked to go down and become the worship pastor down in Pascagoula. And then from there, she was asked to go over to Trinity United Methodist Church, where she has spent the last many, many years. And that's how she now comes back to us. So really, for those of you who know the story of the officer and a gentleman, I envision this time where this soldier, this Marine, comes into a place, swoops her off her feet, and takes her onto this adventure across our country that just leads into this giant X. And yet God has found a way to lead Kim now back from the coast to continue to serve in churches, leading people in worship, where she does hope to finalize her formal training at Belhaven or someplace else, but to use her decades and decades of serving in worship, in music, and in activities and discipleship using music, for her to come and do that here back with us. And so for those of you who know her, I don't know if you knew that. For those of you who don't know her, I know this was kind of a herky-jerky little segment, but I really want you all to know that she's real. She's lived an adventurous life. She can lead out of just her experience her mistakes, her successes, kind of like the rest of us. And so I want y'all to be prepared to engage her, to support her, to love her, to welcome her into our fellowship so that we can worship God fully in spirit and in truth. So Crossgates, that's really all I wanted to offer today, is this update of what God is doing, how God brought Kim all the way from the northern frozen wastelands of Minnesota to a trip to Florida, to New Jersey, finally to Mississippi, leaving Brandon, and eventually coming back to help us worship God well. So Crossgates, let's be prepared to welcome. Let's be prepared to love. Let's be prepared to come back into this beautiful worship life of our church. Pursuant to that, one side note, if any of y'all know, or any of y'all are people who can play the piano, while we're transitioning with Celia and Madeira retiring, if any of y'all know how to play the piano, let me know. It'd be great to have some of the church members fill in to serve there. And if any of y'all know any people who play the piano, and especially if you know someone who plays the organ, let me know. It'd be good to have those instruments continue to be used in worship while we're transitioning. So help me on that one. I need your help on that one. I'll end our conversation today, our midweek update, around our psalm for the day. And this is Psalm 111. And I invite you to join with me in this as a prayer, as a celebration, and as an acknowledgement of what God has done and God is doing in Kim's life, in your life, in my life, to bring us all together in weird trajectories so that we can serve and love him. Praise the Lord. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart, in the company of the upright and in the congregation. Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them. Full of honor and majesty is his work, and his righteousness endures forever. He has gained renown by his wonderful deeds. The Lord is gracious and merciful. He provides food for those who fear him. He is ever mindful of his covenant. He has shown his people the power of his works, in giving them the heritage of the nations. The works of his hands are faithful and just. All his precepts are trustworthy. They are established forever and ever, to be performed with faithfulness and uprightness. He sent redemption to his people. He has commanded his covenant forever. Holy and awesome is his name. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All who practice it have good understanding. His praise endures forever. Crossgates, the worship of God is something we take seriously. The worship of God is something that God takes seriously. But it begins with the upright. It begins with those who understand that our whole heart is to be offered to God. So as we move forward together, as we move forward in unity and in unison and in love, let's move so together, praising the Lord, and praising the Lord for whom God is bringing to us to help us. I see Christ in you. I'll see you on Sunday.